circling. There we go.
Brilliant. Good morning, folks. Lovely to see you join us. We're just going to give it a minute or two just for colleagues to kind of join us. I think maybe we're expecting maybe about 35 folks to be on the call today. So just give it a little minute or two. This is going to be a really relaxed, really informal session. You'll get lots of chance as well to kind of ask kind of questions at the end. You're very welcome. Feel free to have cameras on or off as we make our way through this morning. But I'm just going to give it just another minute just to let people join us before I get us started. All right, I think I'll get us going. So morning, everybody. Hopefully you are here at the right webinar. This morning we're just taking some time to talk about Scotland Demands Better, the march for all of us. We're really delighted to have some external, internal folks come and share with us this morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Emma. I'm head of social justice here at CAS, and we just thought it would be a really good idea for us just to spend some time together to learn a bit more about Scotland Demands Better and how we can get involved. I'm really delighted that we have Peter Kelly, Chief Executive of the Poverty Alliance, joining us this morning. The Poverty Alliance have been front and centre in organising this march. So we're going to get to hear from Peter something about the why we're doing this and what's going to be taking place on the 25th of October. I'm also really delighted to have James Ferns from our Glasgow Social Policy Project. James is just going to talk to us a bit about what this march means for the work of the project that he's involved with and the work that him and Gary are doing and how that all connects. You'll get a bit of chance to hear from myself as I just share to you why we think this march is completely integral to the work that we do across the Citizens Advice Network. And then, as I said, we'll probably have a good 30 minutes for us just to be able to ask questions and have a bit of a conversation together. Please feel free to use the chat as people are speaking this morning. If you've got a question, just stick that in the chat box and we'll get to it. And also we can sort of do the old kind of raised hand and hear some voices as well, so that you're not listening to me the entire morning. And if we're finished before 11 o'clock, we'll wrap up. But we've got all the way through to 11. As you've probably seen, this morning's session is being recorded. There were a number of colleagues who couldn't attend. And so it's just so that people can kind of catch up and hear more about this. And we plan to share that in CAS News later on this afternoon. So I think that's everything by way of housekeeping. I'm really delighted now to hand over to Peter as we get to understand something behind the why of Scotland Demands Better. So over to you, Peter.
Thanks very much, Emma, and thanks everyone for the invitation to come along and speak today. So, as Emma said, I'm going to talk about Scotland Demands Better campaign, and the first thing I need to do when I talk about this campaign is stay right at the start, 25th of October, Edinburgh, big march and rally, because you'd be surprised the number of times I've done this talk and not actually reminded people of when and where we're meeting. So that's the first thing. But so what I'm going to try and cover in the next 10 minutes so is why we're doing this campaign, what it is we're hoping to achieve, and why we think it's really important that the individual bureaus can be involved in this campaign. So I think it's good for me to start off with a very simple statement of belief, my belief, the campaign's belief, and that's that creating a better Scotland, one where every family, every individual, every community has the opportunity to thrive, prosper, is something that we can really achieve. And I think it's important to state that belief at the outset, because all too often it's easy for us to think that nothing can change. Excuse me, I'm getting a bit of a glitch in my machine here, sorry. It's easy for us to think that nothing can change, or if there is change, then it's probably for the worse. I think given the nature of our media, given the nature of our social media in particular, that idea of the permanence of poverty and that nothing really changes and that everything's just getting worse, it can really seem all pervasive and really quite convincing at times. So I think the first job for me anyway, for the Scotland Demands Better campaign is convincing ourselves that better really is possible. And it's not to say that creating that better Scotland is going to be easy, but if we're going to have a chance of achieving it, then we really must first believe in it ourselves, not only that it's desirable, but that it's possible. So I think anyone working or volunteering in a bureau will know better than most folk the struggles that many people face day in, day out. You know about the difficulties people encounter in relation to their housing, or because of problems with their employment, or finding their way through the social security system. You also know that people can find themselves in difficult places for a whole variety of reasons, whether it's the breakdown of a relationship, a bereavement, a period of unemployment, illness, caring responsibilities, violence, debt. It's a whole range of issues, and dealing with the sharp end of personal crises, you'll also see all too often that problems that people face are compounded by systems that don't work, that don't connect, where support is lacking, or where there's simply insufficient resources. I think people involved in the bureaus will see where private personal troubles really do become public issues. And you'll also be aware of many of the efforts that have been made in Scotland over the recent years, but really over the last 20 years, 25 years, to address some of these problems. You know about the efforts in Scotland to improve social security, to address fuel poverty, to tackle the housing crisis. But if we're really honest with ourselves, many of the areas where we want to see change are not moving in the direction we're like, whether it's poverty or public services or health inequalities, even climate change or housing and fair work. There's a sense that I think in Scotland, many of these areas are just a bit stuck, that we're a bit stuck in terms of progress. And the Scotland Demands Better campaign is an attempt by us in the third sector and wider civil society to unstick some of those policy processes to accelerate or secure some of the many changes that we know that we need to see. And I think organisations like CAS and the Poverty Alliance and many other third sector organisations can be really proud of the impact that we've had in some areas of policy on poverty in Scotland. So the Child Poverty Act, the creation of the new Social Security Agency, these are really important areas of progress alongside new housing rights, efforts to tackle fuel poverty. And in one vital area in respect to child poverty, we know that there is a real impact being made. We've got lower and falling rates of child poverty in Scotland compared to the rest of the UK. But despite that progress, it's not at the rate or at the depth that the Scottish Government had intended. And it's certainly not sufficient for people who are struggling right across this country. Commitments have been too often made, but not delivered, or only partially delivered. And I think there's a growing sense of frustration across civil society about that lack of delivery, a frustration and anger really that's reflected across society. That lack of trust in our political institutions and politicians is in large part driven by that sense of a lack of progress or promises not being kept. And it's that frustration and that desire for change that has led so many organisations to support the Scotland Demands Better campaign. And there's, I think, a widespread recognition across the sector, across third sector, but more widely than that, that we need to build pressure on our politicians, need to find new ways, to build pressure on our politicians to genuinely deliver. So Scotland Demands Better is an attempt to get civil society organisations, particularly third sector organisations, to step outside some of the approaches to making change that we tend to rely on. It's about getting policymakers and politicians to understand that we're not only consultees or stakeholders but that we're part of a large, important, independent civil society involving literally hundreds of thousands of people, if we include staff and volunteers across the country, that has roots and connections in all parts of Scottish society, in all communities, and that when we speak, then we're serious. So what is the campaign calling for? We have three broad demands. The first is for better jobs for everyone who needs one, with fair conditions and wages that pay the bills, better investment in life's essentials. So that's like affordable homes, good public transport, thriving natural environment, and strong public services. And our final broad demand is better social security so that all of us have a foundation for the future. These are demands that recognise that we all want similar things: a warm, safe place to call home, a decent income that covers the essentials, healthcare when we need it, good schools for our children, buses and trains that get us where we need to go. And those of us who are elderly, ill or disabled getting the right support and care to live with dignity and respect. And behind those broad demands are 14 specific policy asks, covering everything from sectoral bargaining to student support, increasing the value of Scottish child payment, to building more houses and more besides those. All of the details are on the Scotland Demands Better website, but we can talk about those particular asks in more detail if you'd like. And behind those demands, we've built a strong coalition to support them. Nearly 240 organisations have backed the campaign, and that, I would say, is something of an achievement in itself. That's not, I think, just signing up to a letter, as you know, many of us in the third sector do quite often. This is really, we're asking more of people with this campaign. We're asking to go a wee bit beyond what you would normally do. So we have large third sector organisations like Citizens Advice Scotland, SCDO, Aberlour, Children First, Trussell, Oxfam, Save the Children. I could go on and on. Obviously, it's a big long list, but many local grassroots organisations, including local bureaus as well. We've also had the backing of the Scottish Trade Union Congress and individual unions like Unison, Unite, EIS, again, a long and growing list, and local trades council, trade union councils as well, getting behind the campaign. And of course, to complete that picture of the breadth of civil society, we've had faith groups involved as well. So the Church of Scotland has been a really important backer, as has the Justice and Peace arm of the Catholic Church, the Episcopal Church, as well as individual parishes and congregations increasingly joining the campaign too. So it's a really broad-based campaign, something that's really building for the future. We've got equalities organisations, refugee groups, anti-racism campaigners, climate justice campaigners like Stop Climate Chaos, Friends of the Earth. I'm not going to read out the whole list, but it's big. You can see it's broad. And at the moment, we're all focused on that final push for the mobilisation for the 25th of October. We're hoping for a march and rally that will involve thousands of people and that will be a positive manifestation of hope and solidarity. We're going to march from the Scottish Parliament. We'll be gathering between 10 and 11 o'clock on the 25th of October. We'll leave at 11. We'll march to the Meadows, where we'll have what we know will be a family-friendly rally that's going to involve speeches from the likes of Rosie Frew, the moderator of the Church of Scotland, Ros Foyer from the STUC, Darren McGarvey is going to be there to speak, and other speakers too. We're going to have music from, this will test your knowledge of the Scottish music scene, of Declan Welsh, Bems, Colonel Mustard and the Dijon Five. So some good uplifting, inspiring music, as well as Protest and Harmony, I think, are hopefully going to perform for us at the start as well. There'll be stalls, there'll be food, there'll be activities for kids. So we'll have that kind of festival feel. It's not, I think, the usual political rally. So we're really trying to appeal quite broadly with this. It's an event that we hope will build that greater sense of there being a genuine anti-poverty movement in Scotland, one that works across sectors, across communities, and has a place for individuals who really care about making a difference to poverty and inequality in this country. And an event that builds, as I said, real solidarity and creates momentum for change. After the rally, the campaign won't stop. We'll be redoubling our efforts. We've already been engaging with politicians, but we'll be redoubling our efforts to put pressure on the parties in Scotland ahead of the elections next year. And we're continuing to lobby the UK government for action. We know that Scotland Demands Better is really the start of a process, and that we need to find ways to keep the connections and maintain that momentum. And we know that that momentum is really going to be significantly boosted by a big, positive, noisy, peaceful march through Edinburgh on the 25th of October. So if your bureau hasn't signed up yet, please do so. I'll make sure that we post the links in the chat. And bring your friends, bring your family, bring your colleagues. Spam people like I've been doing on your WhatsApp. All my friends now know about it. Some of them are even coming. And help us really start to chart a route towards the better Scotland that we all want. And as I said at the start, it's not going to be easy. Creating a better Scotland won't happen overnight. It's not going to happen because of one demonstration, but it will happen if we all stand together over the longer term. So I think I've said more than enough, Emma. I'll leave it there. And
that's lovely.
Yeah,
really great. Thanks so much, Peter. Like a really comprehensive overview of kind of why we've got to this moment, what the march is all about. I've no doubt folks might have some like practical questions about like what's actually happening on the day and those sorts of things. So we've got plenty of time in the questions that we can cover that. But if anything's coming to mind, folks, please don't hesitate. Just pop that in the chat and we'll kind of get round to it. But thanks very much, Peter. Great to get us started. I'm delighted now to invite James Ferns to come on and just share a few reflections. As say, James, along with his colleague Gary, have been leading the Glasgow Social Policy Project, and many of the things that Peter has shared already this morning are right at the heart of the work of James and Gary. So, James, be great to hear from you for the next sort of 10 minutes or so about what Scotland Demands Better means for your work.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. So yeah, no, I'm James Ferns, and I'm glad you've introduced Gary. He's busy holding down the fort today, so that's good. He's got our volunteers in the office at the moment. So like Emma was saying, I run the Glasgow Social Policy Project, which is an initiative that strengthens the capacity of kind of local and national social policy work, advocacy and campaigning across the 8 independent Glasgow Citizens Advice Bureau. And yeah, I wanted to say thanks again just for being asked to speak for a couple of minutes on why I'm supporting the Scotland Demands Better campaign and why I feel it's important for Glasgow in general. So I think just when I was thinking of like how to fill this time, I was thinking like every day when I'm working across the Glasgow Bureau, I basically see two things happening at the same time. So you see the dedication of advisors working non-stop to help people in crisis. And then at the same time, you see the reality that things are continuously getting much worse for ordinary people. And it feels like the Citizens Advice Bureau across the country really are essentially propping up a welfare state, a failing welfare state. That's what it feels like. And really, decades of austerity and kind of neoliberal economics have gutted public services. And in Glasgow in particular, successive waves of deindustrialisation stripped away secure jobs, destroyed generational wealth, hollowed out the social infrastructure that sustained communities. And I think this has resulted, to be honest, in a bit of a generalised crisis of hope for a lot of ordinary people. People feel abandoned, left to fend for themselves, prices rise, public services crumble. And I think the frightening thing for a lot of us is that those who benefit from division kind of thrive in this context. And just on that, I want to share something that I witnessed recently in Glasgow a few months ago. So in one of the bureau that I was working in that particular week, a distressed man came in. He'd obviously been drinking. He feared he was going to lose his tenancy. When told he needed an appointment, he lashed out at fellow clients in the waiting room, who are primarily people from minority ethnic backgrounds, shouting things like, you're ruining this country, you're stealing benefits, you should all, be deported, you should all be sent home, before he himself was escorted out. And the tragedy is that the same economic forces that pushed him into crisis are also crushing the people that he targeted. And this scene is now playing out, as we've seen, all over the UK. And it's a manufactured division, carefully curated by a class of unelected billionaires that fund reactionary narratives for decades. And it's because they benefit when ordinary people, fight amongst themselves rather than demand a fairer society that we're trying to do through this campaign. And the truth is that reactionary forces have perfected the art of storytelling. And I think that's why Scotland Demands Better is important, because it counters that to an extent. I think reactionary forces take despair and they give it a tangible villain. They tell people, your neighbours, the reason you're struggling, migrants are stealing your jobs, disabled people are bleeding the system. And that really is, I think, why we need to tell a better story, a story that says your neighbour's not your enemy. The real enemy's, a broken system that keeps wages low, bills high, housing unaffordable. And our story can't just be about anger. It also has to be about hope and the belief that if people work together, they can win a fairer society. And that's why, obviously we're supporting the campaign, but also I like even just the kind of format of the campaign as well. Like Peter said, it isn't just this dry political rally that I've been to a countless ones of them, but it's going to be a little bit more interesting. There's going to be a kind of festival feel to it, I think. So I think that's really important as well, because politics ultimately needs to be interesting. It needs to be engaging. I'll give you another wee example as well. So recently, I was fortunate enough to be invited to Easterhouse Cab's 50th anniversary, and it was a really special occasion. To be honest, it was celebrating 5 decades of dedicated service, showcasing the incredible work the Bureau's done for local people. And during the event, I heard from volunteers past and present and some of the founding members. It was really quite interesting as well. So that was, some of them came along, and there were some recordings as well. But what struck me, and I guess this applies to all advice agencies, is that we've been fighting the same battles for the last 50 years. The same struggles with poverty, inequality and hardship. They were talking about that when the CAB was founded. And this is during the Thatcher era. There's a lot of obviously poverty and deprivation going on at that point in time. There's a lot of fear. And you can kind of feel the same spirit of those times is active now. And Bureau are constantly putting out the fires of economic crisis. But if we want to create lasting change, we really do need to go further. We need to work on solutions that address the root causes and build a fairer society that works for everyone. And that's why I think organisations with a social mission need to do more than put out fires or write reports that don't inform the public conversation or that the public just simply aren't aware of. That's why, as I said, we're supporting the Scotland Demands Better campaign, because it articulates a better Scotland and it represents an effort to break out of kind of third sector silos and engage directly with the public and across civil society. And basically, between now and the 25th of October, I'll be working with colleagues in the Glasgow Bureau, trying to make staff and volunteers aware of the demonstration and hopefully getting people there on the day. So thanks.
Thanks so much, James. Really appreciate your reflections there, and really powerful just to hear some of those examples from local cabs, and that's the reality, isn't it, in so many of our communities. Really challenged by what you said there about the kind of crisis of hope, I guess, that so many of us are experiencing, and the opportunity that we have to tell a better story with Scotland Demands Better. I'm just going to speak very briefly just in terms of what Scotland Demands Better means for CAS and kind of how we really hope to mobilise some of the thousands of staff and volunteers that we have all across the network to hopefully get involved in what's happening on the 25th of October and beyond. And I think James really touched on this in what he was sharing. I don't think anyone on this call needs me to tell you the power of a local cab and the difference that's made every single day in people's lives. Like last year, the network helped over 200,000 people by providing advice and support, a friendly face, a listening ear, going above and beyond time and time again. That included really practical stuff like getting more money into people's pockets. There was about 170 million of financial gain. So really great work was being done to draw alongside people and to try to make folks' lives a bit better. But you know as well as I do that for a growing number of people, our advisors are out of options, that there isn't actually tangible and practical things to do to make people's lives better, and things really are so very hard. We've heard some reflections about the issues that we know that we have with housing, with social security, with energy, debt, accessing public services. These are the things that are really causing harm on an industrial scale to people in communities all across Scotland. James has shared some of the reflections of what's happening in Glasgow. But if you were to speak to Mo up in Skye or the folks on Harris and Lewis, they would tell you that the same things are happening in remote and rural communities as well. Too many people are being forced to endure harm, and particularly as people grapple with insufficient incomes, that's the thing that we hear time and time again, that people do not have enough money to pay for the essentials that all of us need to live a decent and dignified life. And the brutal reality is, at the very same time that people are being faced to endure harm and things are really difficult, our advice services are stretched to the very limit of what is possible. Not only is demand up, but the complexity of issues that people are facing mean that folks need more time from our advisors. Advisors are having to step into the gap and be like that fourth emergency service for people, being forced to kind of deliver corridor care because things really are just so very difficult. And amidst that stretch, we know that our own staff are worried about their own situations as we continue to navigate annual funding cycles where staff continue to be put on redundancy notices, and people spend their day job helping people who are worried about their finances when they go home at the end of the day and feel worried about their own finances. It's a really difficult time for far, far too many people in Scotland, but it doesn't have to be this way. As I've been thinking about Scotland Demands Better, one of the kind of quotes that kind of comes back into my mind, I mean, I'm a Seamus Heaney fan on a good day, but any chance to reflect on Heaney, I will always take. And Heaney once said, if we can winter this out, we can summer anywhere. And I think all of us can agree that when we think about the poverty and hardship that people have been forced to endure, it feels like it has been winter for a very, very long time. The pandemic, the cost of living crisis, all predicated by over a decade of austerity and the erosion of social security. But the thing about Heaney's words are that I think they point to the resilience of communities who have been forced to endurance the worst of circumstances, but also people who can hold on to the hope of something better, that the end of winter is possible, that the eradication of poverty is something that we can achieve, and the start of summer, that the opportunity for all of us to flourish is not just something that we could dream about, but it really is something that is possible. There's something about his words that make me think about the compassion that we need to have for one another, as we've all been forced to endure really difficult circumstances, and also something about justice as we come together to demand a better Scotland for all of us, because enough of this. We should not be forced to continue to endure this, and we demand better for all of these things. And so that's why we need to say to both the UK and Scottish Government that bold and urgent action is needed to tackle these issues. And such an important part of that means coming together, unity and solidarity in how we go about doing that. As Peter mentioned, influencing is something that the third sector has been doing. We have been raising our voice about these issues and perhaps using familiar ways to go about influencing. And a big part of my role and colleagues across Impact at CAS is doing that influencing work. That will continue. We will keep doing that work. But we need to take a moment to try to change the game, to shift the narrative, to really come together to push that agenda of collectivism and solidarity and about being this together, and so that we focus our efforts and attentions on the broken structures and systems that are causing harm to people. And so that's why the Citizens Advice Network and CAS is so hugely behind Scotland Demands Better and looks forward to getting involved on the 25th of October. We're still figuring out all of the details. We've got a wee bit of time, but we really hope that on the day that we could have a block where all of us who are connected with the Citizens Advice Network could meet and come together and march together and be a very visible presence as part of the march. We know that the Citizens Advice Network provides an essential service to hundreds of thousands of people across Scotland, that the staff and volunteers of the Citizens Advice Network play a vital role. So all of us should be visible and present together in that march, in solidarity with each other and in solidarity with all of the others who are gonna be there on that day. And we want to make that as practical and straightforward, as easy as possible. So you're definitely going to be hearing more from us in the coming weeks about how to go about that. I've already shared the link in the chat for you this morning if you've not seen the Scotland Demands Better website. Loads of practical information there, and also lots of resources for you to use. As Peter mentioned, one of the most important things that we can do over the next kind of 3 or 4 weeks is be visible about this and about making some noise, about putting stuff on our local bureau social media sites, even on our own personal social media, talking to our friends, our neighbours, our granny, whoever it is, encouraging and inviting others to get involved, so that really thousands of us can show up on the 25th of October and demand better for all of us. And we really hope by coming along to this call this morning, you've been inspired, that you've heard something a bit more about Scotland Demands Better, and that you're equipped now to go back to your teams, to go back to your local bureau, and start to rally a crowd to get involved. So I think really that's all I kind of wanted to share this morning about why at CAS we're so passionate about getting involved and how we're going to be standing in solidarity. We've got just about 30 minutes left. And really happy to kind of take any questions from you about anything that you've heard from any of us, or anything that you would like to say. So feel free to kind of either use the chat function, or there's not that many of us on the call, so I'm hoping some of you might put your hands up so you don't have to listen to my voice constantly and ask questions. But yeah, over to you for any questions, comments, reflections. Go for it, Joe.
It's just a question and about Peter had spoken earlier about the election coming up next year, and hopefully on the 25th of October that we'll see those demands being articulated about how we want a better Scotland. But we can also already see the politicians lying. We're quite a distance out from the elections, and already promises have been made. It'd be wrong to call them false promises, but promises have been made about how much will be spent. Is there any thought as to, it's probably an unfair question, Peter, but what happens next? Because very often in the past, those of us who have been around for a long time will have seen this surge in enthusiasm and the spirit that these kind of public gatherings can generate. And then people get jaded, people get dispirited, people get disillusioned because there was this coming together, and then maybe we should just call it what it is. Then we're lied to, and that's when people just start to walk away. And the point you made right at the start, Peter, about we shouldn't be cynical or sceptical. We should be aiming for a better Scotland as possible. We should think in those ways. But it's people's experience that leads to them being cynical and sceptical and jaded and walking away. And I just wonder how you and your team see this moving forward beyond October into the winter months and through to that period when we get closer to the election.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, okay to come back in, Emma? It's a brilliant question, Joe. Really important question as well, because I think, and many of us in this call will have been involved in campaigns, whether professionally or personally, over many years. And I think important to remember, being involved in campaigns that have been successful as well as ones that have been unsuccessful, you know, so, you know, I can think of like big high points for me would be things like the anti-poll tax movement, where, you know, I know I don't look it, but that's where I cut my teeth as a young campaigner back in the late 80s and early 90s, you know, massively successful, down to in no small part to the mobilisations that happened around there. But equally, we've been involved in lots of things that that run out of steam, and we're really conscious that there's a lot of effort going into trying to mobilise for the 25th of October. Our minds are also on what do we do next. So there's a lobbying and political strategy that we have that will take us up until the elections next year, with some of it's already started. So we've had MSP drop-ins and had really good response to that a couple of weeks ago. There'll be more individual engagement with ministers, with advisors. That's already started to happen, and we'll build that. So this is kind of like the very public phase, and then we'll do that lobbying phase, but we'll keep the public element going. So there'll be the kind of you know, write to your MSPs, write to your candidates kind of thing. We're looking at options around hustings just to keep the idea of Scotland Demands Better alive. I think, I mean, again, just being really open, there are discussions within, there's a large steering group leads this campaign, 20 organisations, so that you can imagine the delight that is. So there are different views on how do we maintain after May next year. Some arguing we keep the campaign going. I think probably a more likely and more dominant view is that you know, we've done the business of building the brand and getting the supporters and all that kind of thing, and it's like, how do we keep it alive or make it go into abeyance and then renew when we need it to? But certainly the Poverty Alliance, as the National Anti-Poverty Network, we've got 400 members. You know, only I think about 150 of them are signed up to the campaign, so we've got a good number who aren't there, and we'll need to keep, through our membership, keep this thing alive as well. So we're certainly taking on a big responsibility for that. But really, it's this sense of we're building to a crescendo now. There's inevitably a drop off, but we need to start planning for what are the next phases of this. Hope that answers some of your question, Joe.
Thanks,
Yep.
Peter. Do you want to come back in, Joe?
Thanks, Peter.
And certainly from our point of view at CAS, we will be continuing to build on the momentum and use opportunities kind of post 25th of October. Most of you on this call are probably familiar with our forecast webinar series. You know, there'll be opportunities for us to be keeping these issues alive and focusing on them as much as we possibly can, certainly up until the elections in May, and then working with Poverty Alliance and others in terms of sort of what happens really beyond that point. I think that one of the other links I'm just going to put in the chat that sort of reminds me about sort of helping you to kind of keep updated. That's the form that you can use for your individual bureau to sort of sign up and be part of Scotland Demands Better. That means you get to add another number and be part of one of those other hundreds of other organisations that are part of it. But also by signing up, you'll be getting campaign emails and newsletters directly into your inbox, which I think is really helpful just to kind of keep up to date. Yes, we'll do that centrally, but getting some of that coming into you directly, I think is really helpful as well. Right, Aoife, I think you were next.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, I was also going to ask what was going to be happening after the march, so that's been covered. But I just have a kind of more practical questions around banners and signage at the march. I imagine this is in train and maybe this information is coming. But yeah, just whether that's been organised or whether we can make our own, what the kind of arrangements are around that.
Brilliant. I think Andy is on this call, so he won't mind me defaulting to him in a moment. But two things. So as you'll see from the Scotland Demands Better website, there's some really brilliant, just sort of like oven ready stuff that folks can use in terms of printing off postcards, flyers, leaflets. I think I've seen some Scotland Demand posters actually in some of the cabs already. So there's stuff there that is available, but I know we've been thinking about how we can incorporate some of our own brand and colouring into the resources that are there. So Andy, sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but maybe anything you might want to say about that?
Not at all. The current thinking is we will have banners, a big banner that we can all get behind. So I'm in the process of creating that, getting that organised. And then we'll be looking at other ways to get our messaging and our branding across. So yeah, that will be coming out. There will be, just to give everyone a heads up, there probably will be a DIY element. So get your best Blue Peter action ready.
Absolutely, bit of crafting over lunchtime. Prize for the best pun on a banner, always. Peter, I don't know, is there anything else you want to say about sort of resources and stuff?
I mean, this is probably for Andy, but you know, we've started to share information about where you get placards made if you want to go down that route as well. There is no aspect of organising a demo now that I don't seem to have information on, but absolutely the sort of the homemade placards and stuff like that, I think that's almost always more impactful. We've got, it's Challenge Poverty Week next week, and I know that various organisations, local organisations, are doing placard making classes. So look out for some of those, or do your own. Yeah, so and also if you want additional materials, we've got all the usual stickers, badges, flyers, all that kind of stuff. Drop a line to the Poverty Alliance, and we can get back out to you as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Hopefully that answers that. Aoife, great question. Steph, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks everybody for that. That was brilliant. I'm conscious that there's been quite a lot of interest across the network, which is absolutely fantastic. And obviously we're very, very keen to be able to make sure as many people are able to actually participate on the day and be there. But for those that are much further afield that perhaps can't actually be there in person, I just wondered if there was anything in particular that you'd point towards them doing, aside from obviously helping to spread the word and encouraging as many people to attend where it's possible to do so.
Yeah, great question, Peter. I know there's some stuff going on about buses and things that might be really useful for local cabs to hear about. So can I pass to you?
Sure. And again, there's information on buses on the website. But what we've done is establish a transport bursary. So for any organisation that wants to book a bus, we will support the cost for organisations whose income is less than £1 million a year. We're going to pay 60% of the cost of a bus booking. There's an online form to complete an application form, it's a mini funding application form, because we know, like, we've got a couple of buses coming down so far from Aberdeen. It costs a lot of money to put on a bus from Aberdeen. We're hoping, we've got a public meet taking place in Inverness tonight, so if there's anyone from that neck of the woods on the call, then that's happening this evening. You know, similarly expensive to get down from there. So we're looking to try and support people in that way. We're also paying for 80% of buses that are fully accessible to encourage people with limited mobility to make it to the march as well. I also should say that we know that the route of the march is, you know, going uphill and going up cobbles, which, you know, is a challenge for a lot of folks. So there's also an opportunity to join the march for people with more limited mobility from Chambers Street, which is then on the smoother, more downhill part of the march. So that would be one of the key ways. The other thing though, Steph, is we are still talking to particularly disabled people's organisations and some of our members and supporters that are more further afield to try and identify ways that they can contribute without actually being there. We did a public meeting in Dumfries on Thursday there, and that was one of the big issues. You know, people who are keen to come, but, you know, with a quite dispersed population in Dumfries, that can be difficult. We've got groups in Argyll and Bute who've made lots of little flags that we're going to try and display on the day, with with their own kinds of demands from different things from Argyll and Bute, which is a great sort of craft exercise, great sort of building exercise as well. And we've got, I think, young people from the Children's Parliament who are also producing things that, you know, for them not to be there, but we're going to hopefully display those. There'll be a big marquee tent type thing with stalls from third sector and civil society organisations, and we're hoping to get some of that stuff displayed in there. So yeah, we're looking for creative ideas around that. We've not probably quite nailed it. We didn't want to do an online version. People were telling us that that doesn't feel genuine, so we're looking at what are the other creative ways that folks can be there. But principally, I would really encourage folks to book buses. We're starting to see them coming from Fife, from Dundee, from Aberdeen. We've got a special designated fund for Glasgow as well. So if you want to book a bus from Glasgow, then we've got designated funds for Glasgow that GCVS and the city have given us. So yeah, that opportunity is there to make sure that people can actually get there.
Brilliant, really helpful. Hopefully that answers your question, Steph. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments? Anything that we haven't covered? Yeah, Laura, do you want to come on in?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a plan for, and I had to just go over to Facebook to have a look because I don't know the terminology, but for a frame that people can put on their profile picture, because they're quite long lasting and could be quite effective. So you can just leave it up there as long as you want to. So I just wondered if there is one, and or if not, if there's a plan.
There is one, Laura, and to my shame, I have not done it yet. So it's not on my profile and on any of my socials. I'm not sure it's on the website. I can dig out the link and maybe send it over, Emma.
Yeah,
I think
I've seen
Twibonize or something like that.
That's right. I think I've seen
yeah.
on the Poverty Alliance's LinkedIn page, I think I've seen sort of Davy sharing various things like that, but we'll make sure we get some links out, Laura. But yeah, things like that, they're really visible.
Yeah, I just searched for it to see if it was there already, but it didn't pop up for me.
We'll get you that. We'll get you that information.
Cool, thanks.
Great question. Dennis, do you want to come in?
Hi, thank you for that. I'm sorry if this was covered already and I missed it, but I was wondering if there is anything around the demands, and I know that there's a lot of demands and all of them have like a lot of details, but if there's anything like a QR code to create a template to write to the MPs, or like anything like that on the day that can be handed out to people in leaflets or anything, because I feel like that can be quite an easy way for people to directly get involved, like beyond joining the rally, or anything similar to that if it's planned, and if we can help with that.
That's a really, really good point. I don't think we're working on various materials that will go out on the day. I don't think we'll plan for that to go out in the day, but actually I'll throw that into the campaign group and see where they go with that. We are definitely planning the get in touch with your MPs, so we'll be gathering as much personal data from folks who attend as we possibly can. But I think that idea of a QR code that folks who are attending can use to then sign up, because people will be there who haven't signed up to any of the mailing lists. I know there's hundreds of folk who have already, and that link that Emma put in the form, put in the chat to sign up organisations, you can also sign up as an individual just to get updates there as well. But yeah, Dennis, we'll absolutely be making sure that kind of action is core. So we want to keep that mobilisation going. We want to keep people engaged. And one of the things that we'll want them to do is to write to their MSPs and MPs in the period after the demo.
And I'm right in thinking, Peter, that MPs and MSPs are invited to come along on the day to sort of witness and see that no platform is being given for any kind of political kind of commentary from any kind of parties, but that invitation has gone out, and actually from a local bureau level, like writing to your local MP, your local MSP, to tell them that you are taking part in Scotland Demands Better, and asking them, will you be attending on the day, could be a really key bit of action to take.
Absolutely, Emma. We've done that work, particularly focused on the Scottish Parliament, but the invites have also gone to MPs, and we had a really good response on the day we did a drop-in for MSPs at the Parliament, more than 30 showing up on the day. So yeah, we're hoping that they'll be there, but as you say, no politicians speaking on the platform. We think that's important in terms of the tone and the approach that we're taking.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can see folks on this call I know who've got good relationships with their MPs, their MSPs. So yeah, utilise that. Joe, do you want to come back in?
You don't mind. Peter, it's a broader question. Just there, when you talked about one of the groups manufacturing flags, and I was thinking back to James's point about manufactured division, and I'm linking a few things here. I'm sorry if it seems tenuous, but I will attend a meeting locally about racist incidents here in Western Bartonshire. Has there been any talk amongst your wider group about using the Scotland Demands Better campaign to reclaim the saltire, or to make an attempt to reclaim the saltire?
Yeah, and I think I had meant to come back in on James's point, because I think it's really important. I think we're at I mean, any of us and all of you will be engaged in the public discourse at the moment, and will know what a difficult conjuncture we're in, to use that word. You know, we're just a really tricky time, and that question of the saltire, that I'll come back to that, but I think, you know, we are expecting that perhaps some of that can I say I won't say some of that might appear at the rally, because we know that we've been quite upfront about making Scotland Demands Better aligned with the concerns of refugees and people in the asylum system. We've got a really strong anti-racist bloc that will be at the demonstration. Stand Up to Racism has been a really strong supporter of the campaign, and strong supporter of the campaign in those periods where there's been counter demonstrations to the hard right in Falkirk and in Glasgow and in other places. So we expect there'll be a response, and we're putting in all the measures that we need to make sure that people are safe and secure on the rally. We've got really good security and so on. But I think how we reclaim the saltire, there'll be groups. I know that there's some Yes Scotland groups attending. They will bring their saltire. They will be coming, I think, from a very different place than some of those others. But I guess we're trying to reclaim the narrative rather than necessarily the flag. We had an op-ed piece in the Scotsman on Thursday there, myself and Chris Burt from Joseph Rowntree Foundation, really saying that this is the alternative to that kind of divisive rhetoric, that kind of negative approach that will leave us all worse off. So in that way, I think we're trying to place the campaign in that space, whilst not allowing ourselves to be, I think, distracted is the wrong word, but drawn to that kind of debate, but to set out a really positive, hopeful thing that bypasses some of the really negative and horrible, hateful stuff that we've been seeing over recent weeks and months. One thing I would say as well, because I know we're running out of time, and this is another request. Every time I go to one of these meetings, there's a request to people. So obviously the big request is, you know, if you're an organisation, then sign up and help get people there. That's a big request. One of the things we do need is stewards for the march, and I know that's a big ask, but it's a simple job. It's putting on a nice yellow vest and walking alongside, or being a static steward at some of the points where we need static stewards. Again, we'll share information about how you can sign up to do that, but it's a really, really critical thing. We've got about 30 or 40 stewards so far. We need another 100 to make the thing work at the kind of levels that we need. So really, I would ask you to seriously consider if you could do that. If you've done it before, you'll know it's not a big task walking alongside a nice peaceful demonstration. So please drop me a line. I'll share the link to sign up to be a steward. So that would be one really important ask.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks, Peter. I'm gonna start wrapping us up just so that we do finish on time this morning. Hopefully that's most of our questions kind of answered. I don't see anything in the chat that we've not answered, but you can absolutely get back to myself or also to Nicole, our senior campaigns officer. She's just on leave today, but she's back in a couple of days' time. And Nicole in particular is kind of coordinating CAS colleagues as a sort of group sort of coming together in the mix, but also very much there for individual bureau if you've got any questions. I really hope this morning it's given you a bit of inspiration to get involved, a bit of a nudge to think about what you can be doing, what your local CAB can be doing as we kind of bring and connect folks along today. Hopefully, you know, if you've never been along to kind of a protest or a march today, you've heard that this is something that's going to be safe, that's going to be family friendly, hopeful, and kind of speaking to that better future, really, that we want for all of us. We really, really do hope that the Citizens Advice Network can be a really visible presence as part of the march. As I say, Andy's looking at banners and all sorts, so that our blue and yellow will be very present on the day, and that people can know that we're really behind it. Any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. More information will keep coming out via CAS News and the usual channels. Peter, James, thank you both so much for your time this morning. Really helpful, James, just to get that really local voice about why it matters to you guys in Glasgow. I hope that's been really useful for folks to hear. But we'll wrap up now and maybe let folks get back along with their days. Any questions, get in touch, and I really look forward to seeing lots of you on the 25th of October. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Emma.
Thank you.
See you later.
Right, bye.